the number of people in the tournament will have to had almost be infinity. So every time you want to add a round to a bracket, you have to double the number of competitors. So some guy on YouTube and on the internet did the math and said
Right.
there would literally have to be like 74 quadrillion people. Hey guys, it's been a long time coming, but it finally happened. Frank Dux is on the channel. It was an amazing interview. It even exceeded my expectations. And there's going to be a series of videos, but in this one, we are going to make sense of the real Kumite as best we can. Now, I know a lot of you guys have probably seen websites or videos, etc., discrediting the man, especially when it comes to his Kumite claims. But you got to hear him explain everything because it's not as crazy as you think. It's actually very plausible that all this stuff could have happened. Now, obviously, I wasn't there. I can't say whether it happened or not. Alls I can ask you, keep an open mind because we address a lot of stuff. Kumite math, for example, where people say, oh, there's not enough people on the planet to have participated in the Kumite. If you talk about the way most people think that it was structured, and if he did, in fact, actually knock out 56 people consecutively. We'll also address the footage that showed up years ago that people say, no, that's not Frank Dux, it was actually Philip Catteray. Well, was it? Maybe, maybe not. We address that and a whole lot more. Anyway, if you like this kind of video, please help support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing, and sharing the video. Let's start here, Frank. So I want to really address the Kumite. Let's make sense of it with the audience because there's a lot of
Sure.
things out there with Kumite math and other claims. But just to start at the very beginning here, the information at the end of Bloodsport, where and I'll just reference it here, where it says from 1975 to 1980, Frank W. Dux fought 329 matches, retired undefeated as a world heavyweight full contact Kumite champion, still holds 4 world records: fastest knockout, fastest punch, fastest kick, most consecutive knockouts in a single tournament, 56. So just a simple question: is this actually true, or was that something the producer wanted to
Well,
put on the film?
you got to understand, you can't compare apples to oranges, okay? This is not MMA.
Mm-hmm.
This is not boxing, okay? This is not tennis, all right? Where it's one-on-one and you have brackets and you have a tournament and you can go from a single bracket to another bracket and then you're eliminated all the way down. Kumites are run in a variety of ways. A good example of that is Masayama. He had 100-man Kumite. He fought 200 men over a 2-day period.
That's crazy.
Nobody has a problem with that. Nobody has an issue with that. Somehow I have 300 over my career span, which is dwarfed by Oyama. People find a problem with it, and that's because they're dealing out of ignorance. The Kumite just is going back to when I first talked about it in Black Belt magazine. It's a learning experience. It's a rite of passage. It's not a contest about putting butts in seats. Okay, that's really important to understand. This is not where you have headliners and you say, Mayweather, versus,
Sure.
Ali or whatever. Which would be spectacular, bringing two different people together that couldn't fight together at the same time. But anyways, my point is, you're fighting in an atmosphere where you're really proving your techniques. It's a proving ground. That's what it was really designed for. It's fueled by illegal gambling. So yeah, nobody's really trying to keep records of who's there. Nobody's taking pictures because nobody wants to be ID taking part in an illegal activity, especially if they may have a job that's a public service job. They could be fired and terminated for that. You're an attorney, you could lose your license over that. So yeah, there's not much footage of it around, just for the reason that you had all this illegal gaming going on. And again, it has nothing to do with selling tickets. The whole point of it is, in my Kumites, for example, I fought a variety. I showed Sky Benson, I think he described to you on the show, were more representative, like you saw in the movie
Lionheart.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's kind of strong representative of some of the Kumites I fought. But at the same time, I fought tournament style, which is kind of a bad way to explain it. But let me frame it in this context. In Kumite, you fight. It's about endurance. It's really a test of endurance, and again, it's a proving ground of your technique. So they'll send a different guy against you, a fresh guy against you every minute. So when I fought my Kumite that the Bloodsport thing was about, you basically fought 20 guys a day for 3 days. Out of that, you end up with about eight guys who are they feel are the best. Okay, what's going on, and then you fight a single elimination from that point on, and that's sort of like how the first UFC was conducted. You end up with a single winner. In
So
my
of those eight
Kumite,
fighters, real quick, Frank, that are left, then basically the winner only has 3 fights, right?
well, you have about 63
No,
fights
I
left.
mean once you get to that final part, there's 8 dudes left, and then
Yeah,
they each fight a guy. Then there's 4, and then there's
yeah,
just
and that usually happens on the last evening
oh,
of
okay.
whatever the event is going to be. But they try to keep it as close together as possible because when you get an injury and you're hyped up, you don't really feel it till the next day. That's why it's a real test of endurance, and they make us fight it over 3 days
Yeah, that's
because you
interesting.
may do really great on your first day, but you start feeling it on your second, and then by the time you're on your third day, man, it's excruciating.
Hmm.
And that's why it's a rite of passage. That's why you really go through this, and it's really about finishing. It's not even about who really wins. Can you go the whole distance? That's what it's about. And sometimes you'll fight the same guy 2 or 3 times. Why? Because they need to send in a fresh fighter all the time against you. So it all depends on what they have as a pool of fighters to work against you. And each club will send their champion. So you have 20 clubs, let's say, with each champion. Then you have these other fighters that are there that are participating in it. And you can even have just 20 of them. You don't have to have a lot. You can do the whole event with like 40 people easily because they're rotating in. You see, that's the whole thing. That 20 is rotating in all the time against the other 20. So that's how it kind of works.
So real quick, Frank, basically, I guess there's like a misconception because let me give you one of the big arguments that people they'll make fun of. For example, they'll say, and this goes with the consecutive knockouts, and I'm sure you've heard this argument. They will
Yeah.
say, in order for Frank Dux to knock out 56 men in a row in one tournament to win, the number of people in the tournament will have to had almost be infinity. So every time you want to add a round to a bracket, you have to double the number of competitors. So some guy on YouTube and on the internet did the math and said
Right.
there would literally have to be like 74 quadrillion people. So they're just thinking about it
Yeah.
completely differently than basically how you explain this thing
Well,
works.
here's the thing. They're working with the framework that they're used to, which is a kickboxing match, MMA match. You fight the guy, you win. You move on, or even in some cases, some karate tournaments, but you're not fighting, 60 bouts in a day. You might fight like 8 bouts. So it really depends on what your pool is, of course, to work with, and whether it's single or double elimination. You don't have to have that many people. You do it as a triple elimination. We can even work it that way. The numbers go down when it's based on how many elimination bouts you have to fight and who you go against. Maybe I lose against this guy, but I lose against the other two, so therefore I'm eliminated. The guy I beat, he gets to go on because he beat the next two. It can go on and on. So when we talk about this math, it really doesn't hold true unless you really are looking at, well, what were the rules of the day? What was really going on? What was the real format? And traditional Kumite matches, if you really pay attention, when they're done tournament style, it's always fresh fighters, and then you're limited to like 3 to 8 different matches at the end of it till your winner's determined.
Okay. There's an article on Art Voice that illustrates an example of how the Kumite math actually would make sense. So it states, full contact Kumite is not a Western culture-based competition, linear in how it's conducted but reflects the Asian culture and its martial arts, circular in its thinking. Imagine a circle of 60 participants being paired off to fight. After each fight, win, lose, or draw, each contestant steps to their left to fight another match until everyone has cycled through the entire circle. Fighting only 20 opponents per day over the span of 3 days makes possible one person fighting 60 opponents without the tournament having to have thousands of participants or requiring thousands of man hours as well. Now, if the format were a no elimination 60 match qualifier with 8 finalists single elimination tournament, total fights to win the whole thing would be 63.
But in the ones I participated in, and it's in Black Belt Magazine, I said it. It's like you'd fight 20 matches on one day, 20 the next, and 20 the following day. I think on that event we fought, it was 56 matches, and then it was the last 3 were the matches of the 60 were we moved to the single elimination bracket. And again, this is inter-club, competition. This is, Black Dragon Society. This is not, advertised, even though we did have a couple of guys who did talk their way into the tournament from other who aren't affiliated, but were thought they were real badasses. Good example of that was Rick Robinson, who the Jackson character is based on.
You Jackson? You look like a Jackson.
Okay. And Rick had basically, I don't really kind of remember Rick too much being there, but when I met Rick later, he came to my school and he described everything in perfect detail of what had happened and how he got in. And basically he had heard of the event from Ark Wong. He had been training with Ark Wong in Chinatown in LA. Okay. He talked his way, somehow found out what the event was, talked his way into the event, and he got slaughtered because he was not prepared for that. It's not his fault. He wasn't a bad martial artist. He was just not prepared. He walked in with a concept where it was going to be like single elimination matches and stuff. And, it wore him down to the point he was out. That's why he said to the LA Times, he made a comment, said, whatever Frank says is good with me. Meaning like, he told the real story of how he was beat, how hard it was. And that was discounted and taken out of context.
Let me ask you this, Frank. How and why did you get in the Kumite like in 1975?
Well, it was just a natural progression. It was, I was learning from some of the best martial arts around. I was part of the Dragon Society. I was welcomed into it. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 archetypes, I guess, or circles. And the martial arts world is really like a series of circles. Okay. On the peripheral, you have your enthusiasts who never train, but try to train on their own. Okay. Then you have some that go to a school and they train in a school for a while and then they continue their training on their own and they're doing their thing. Then you have the diehard guy who's in there, he trains every day and he never leaves the school. Then you have the circle of guys who are basically, they run schools. Okay. But then you have the one guy who may run a school or who may be in a school who captures the attention of this other circle. And it's an inner circle. And they're invited to come into that circle. And the way you get into that circle is you got to do Kumite. You have to prove yourself. And that's what happened with me. I got to work in this inner circle with some of the greatest masters you could ever imagine. And they keep it quiet. It's not that they're secret. It's just a private club. It's just, you got to be invited in. They don't want publicity. They don't want notoriety. They don't want people banging on their doors. Let me in. Let me in. I want to be a part of this, And,
let me ask 2 more things, Frank, because I do want to get like clarity on these, with the arguments that, people will try to discredit you and your claims. Okay, and this relates to the info they put at the end of Bloodsport, fastest knockout 3.2 seconds, fastest punch with a knockout 0.12 seconds, fastest kick 72 miles per hour. So in the Black Belt Magazine article, though, apparently they were filming this stuff so they could study it, right?
Yeah, there was film footage of it, and the way they made those determinations was by frame speed. They basically would count the frames, and they knew how fast the frames were moving, and then based on the frame speed and looking at the contact, that's how they came up with those numbers.
Yeah, which, and I've said in prior videos, that's what always kind of threw me off, like how would they measure it? But I could see where you're going with the film speed and measuring the frames and everything, but do you think it is possible? Like this footage has to be out there somewhere, right?
Well, it has been. There's people, this footage will become exceptionally valuable, not today. When I'm dead, that's when people are going to want to pay big money for it.
And do you think it will actually come out? someday when you're done?
I would hope so. Look, some footage of me has come out, and people say, "Oh, it's this person or it's that person." And you can look in the film
Real
and you
quick,
can see
Frank.
it
So
clearly it's me.
I did want to bring that up. That they're saying that one YouTube video that came out years ago is a dude named Philip Catteray. Was that Philip Catteray? Or was that actually you?
I didn't film it. I wasn't a part of it. Okay. And people, look, a lot of times we have people look very much like us. Okay.
Sure.
But here's the thing that works in my favor. And I want to say this. They tried to out me. Okay. And they ran it under facial recognition software.
Oh,
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay. Now, what they don't tell you is it came back me, like 98 point something points.
So that
I'm just trying to tell you. I'm just trying to tell you. They ran they looked at the footage and they blew it up, and you can do a pixel count. Mm-hmm. And you can do, based on the number of pixels, and you look at those pixels, and this is all forensic investigation, okay? You can tell forensically that footage is 1980. Carteret didn't appear on the scene until 1986. If you look at the Fuji symbol in the background, they were saying and lying, "Oh, it's from 1986, therefore Frank Dux couldn't have been, he's lying," right? The symbol wasn't around. No, you can go to Wikipedia, look up Fuji symbols, and you'll see it's from 1980. So that's the only thing I can talk to. Is it me? I can't honestly tell you, because again, I'm not the one who took the footage, and I quite frankly, I fought so many damn matches all over the place. It's a blur to me in many cases. So, I'm being as honest as I can be on this subject. It's easy for me to say, "Yeah, that's me," and then make it a shouting match between me and the other guy.
It's interesting. It's almost like, the footage of Bigfoot or something.
Right.
Like, it might be Bigfoot, it might not. So you don't even know if that's you, but it could be. But nobody could really say it's not. But there is evidence to say, at the minimum, it's probably not even Philip Catteray. If it's not you, it might not even be Philip Catteray either.
That's true too.
Some other dude, or it might be you.
That's true too. What we do know is that it was filmed at the time I was fighting. We do know that. Okay. And like I said, Catteray didn't show up in the scene until 1986, from what I understand. I've never seen anything of the guy other than what I've been told by people who claim he was around doing that, and everything on him is like in color. This is black and white footage. There ain't too many people that had black and white cameras around at the time, in 1986. Everybody kind of like dumped them.
Sure.
You understand what I'm saying? So I couldn't tell you. I can't tell you. What I can tell you is the forensics point to me. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. That's all I can tell you about it. I'm not, and it's like I said, it's so easy for me, much easier for me to turn around and say, "Yes, absolutely, that's me. You can see it's me, blah, blah, blah," and push that narrative. But I'm a person that will always say that if it isn't 100% conclusively that I know that for a fact, I'll always leave that room for error.
Sure.
And even when it's against my best interest, because I want to be as truthful as I can.
Well, some of you may scoff at the whole idea that Frank Dux doesn't necessarily know if that's him in that footage, or if it's Philip Catteray, or if it's even another guy. It's not that crazy, and I'll tell you why. In Frank Dux' defense, I've seen pictures and video from like 20 years back when I was in my early 20s. I honestly don't know if it was me or my brother. We look similar. We're not twins. We look similar enough. The footage is cleaner than the Philip Catteray / Frank Dux / who knows who this guy is footage. So there's something to what he's saying, and my brother could vouch for that. Sometimes when we look at old photo albums, it's like, is that you or me? Or even video, like I said, of our training footage. So there's something to what he says, and I could go along with that. I have no problem with that.
I'm under a microscope all the time, and not because of the martial arts. Okay, I work as a diplomat. In real life, I'm the U.S. delegate to the World Organization for Peace. I mean, I deal with heads of state. They depend on my veracity when I give them assurances or I say something. And that can make a difference between whether a person lives or dies sometimes. And I have to protect that. I can't play games with that, okay? Because that's what the responsibilities are. And that's why I get so upset at these guys when they start attacking me online because they don't realize what I'm doing in the background, what I do in my other part of my life, and how they could end up killing somebody because of their own stupidity by saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. Okay, that's why that's where I get upset. That's when my wife gets upset. You know, you're negotiating the release of somebody in North Korea, for example. You know what I mean? You know,
Yeah.
okay,
That's
all right. Tell that to the family. You know that you got to with your shits and giggles, trolling me really paid off. I mean, and here's the thing: I am a strong believer in karma. I'm a believer in how this stuff goes around and it affects people. That whatever happens as a result of that, you can pretty much bet that it's going to come back to that person in their family some way or somehow. And I've seen it happen so many times. I can't even begin to tell you. And that's when you start seeing as much as I do, you really understand how the universe works. You can really see the causal effect on a spiritual plane,
sure.
not the physical plane.
Let's just a little more things with the Kumite, just a little more clarity.
Sure.
This is great stuff. So how many Kumites you were in? It's 1975, right? That was one of them.
That was one of them. Yeah, I think I fought about 3 or 4. Honestly, I was fighting every week.
Real quick though, Frank, were these Kumite the official Kumites? They were only like every
the official or the big official Kumite, the one they call the Kumite.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the deal. This is the biggest Kumite ever.
Okay, from 1968. I think it was in 1968. It was held in Chicago. Then in 68, it was 1972. Let's see, 1972. It was held 72 or 71.
So they're not necessarily every
like
5 years.
67. It's held in 67. It was 1967 Chicago. I think it was 1971. I'm trying to remember where it was held right now.
But as far as like the ones you've been in, you did the one.
I did mine in a private residence on a private residence island off of Nassau in the Bahamas.
And that was like in 1975. This
right.
one in the Caribbean islands, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it was held in 71. It was held there too. I think it was the second time it was held there. And and yeah, I think it was held there. And I think it actually Kean had gone to it in 1964, something like that. Because the 67 event, I don't think was, I'm trying to remember, was that a big one or not? But anyways, it's, you know, I wish Dr. Day was here. He could tell you right away. You know what I mean?
But as far as real quick, Frank, like the official ones, was there another one in 1980 you competed, or what? As far as like the official ones, was it really just that 75 one?
It's a club. Look, it's a club thing. You have the individual matches by the different clubs themselves, right? Then you have the big one where kind of like 10 or 12 clubs kind of get together and say, hey, we're going to send our best guys. You're going to send your best guys, and we're going to do it this way, you know. And that's from around the world. You know, that basically you'll have guys from Brazil coming, you have guys from China, Japan.
We got fighters from all over.
Korea.
So real quick, Frank, though, as far as like the footage that Sky Benson explained, that was like obviously probably not in the Caribbean, right? That was just smaller stuff, but still considered Kumite, or were they considered?
No, it's still considered Kumite. Most of the Kumite matches that I did were in Mexico.
Most in Mexico?
Mexico. In fact, I think 71 was in Mexico, now that I think about it. I'm trying to remember who won that. But anyways, and yeah, I think Chong Li won that one, actually. So yeah, that would have been, I think that was 71, it was in Mexico. So yeah, and a lot of those matches took place. I fought in Mexico, a lot of these single matches that you see. I fought in Milan. I fought all around the world, to be quite honest with you. It's like I said, it's really you have different clubs or different cells, if you want, of the Black Dragons, and they'll say, hey, we want to put our guy against your guy, or hey, he's in town, let's test him. You know, and again, it's not about putting butts in seats. Remember that. It's more.
There wasn't money in fighting back then anyway, outside of even boxing. Those dudes didn't make anything, right? Compared to like what people do now.
Yeah, it was more like again, it's more about testing your mettle. Hey, Frank Dux is in town. He's the guy who won the event. Let's see how you do against him. You know, it's more that kind of camaraderie and excitement. And then you
Let me
go.
ask you this, Frank.
Yeah.
Would you say it's kind of similar to what like Kimbo Slice got famous doing those?
Oh yeah,
So that was
Kimbo,
kind of like Kumite type stuff, just those.
well, Kimbo's is an offshoot of that. That Kimbo actually, just for fights, kind of come out of that whole idea. I mean, you have bare knuckle boxing that's been going on since the 30s in this country. Okay, um, that came out of these matches because what happened is the sailors would go to Shanghai and they'd see these matches weekly, and they bring it back to the States and hey, I can do this, and they made it bare knuckle boxing matches, because people could relate to that. In those days, you have to understand, if you kicked a guy, it was considered cowardly.
Let me ask you this: why did you retire from fighting? Because you were young, probably what, 25 when you retired, maybe younger than that.
Yeah. Well, I retired in what 1980.
Okay.
It wasn't about it. It wasn't really like retired per se. It was just that I had moved on past that phase of testing myself, and I'd moved on to the phase of becoming a teacher, taking all that knowledge and using it to better other people's lives, their techniques. And that was the next evolution of who I was. Again, remember, this is not, the Kumite matches are not about putting, again, butts in seats and glory and all this other garbage that you see going on that motivates people, in the MMA and in some of these other aspects of martial arts today. This was about really, defining yourself as a warrior and defining your skill sets and your attitude and what you wanted to bring to it. That's what it was about.
Let me ask you this, Frank. Like, would you want to compete? Not now, obviously, but had you been born later, would you have basically wanted to join the UFC or something, you think?
I don't know. For me, it was really, again, it was more of a learning experience, honoring my instructor. That's the beauty of, I think, of Bloodsport. That was the lesson. He's going there to honor his instructor. He's not going there, for any other reason.
Why? To honor you, Shidashi.
Right?
Yeah, and that's why we love Lionheart as well. I mean, he's
Yeah.
he's not even out there for the money for himself. He's out there for the money for his, sister-in-law.
Just give me 1 week to get the money for them. 1 week.
Right.
The motivation's more honorable.
Right. And that's the motivation really of a Kumite fighter. It's not, that's what separates us from a mixed martial arts fighter.
Sure.
in a big way. It's all about really taking the lessons and protecting yourself against this ladder of complacency. Most people don't understand what that is. And that is, every society gets pushed at with resistance, and they push at it and push at the resistance level, and they keep pushing the line back further and further and further. A good example of that is TV or entertainment, right? It was a time that if you showed pornography, that was a jail sentence. Today, you have 11-year-olds addicted to porn and nobody's talking about it.
That's crazy. It's the cell phones, too easy to access.
Okay. Because that's the ladder of complacency. See, I was really taught by some real masters. Remember I told you that inner circle?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the inner circle sees their role as being really sort of like the guardians of the universe in a way. They're the ones who will act. We're expected to act to root out evil. We don't wait for, and we're not a vigilante group. It's about impacting people and never moving along the lines of this ladder of complacency. So we try to lead by example. We try to live a higher moral life. That's why I got into the service of working with kids. After Bloodsport, I could have opened a school in Beverly Hills. I had it. My ticket was written for me. I had a very big real estate developer there saying, hey, building's yours. You don't have to worry about rent. You just come teach, and we're going to build this thing. And it was massive. And then at the same time, I had a guy walk in, And it's really kind of funny how it happened. And I was excited about doing this big thing, you know. I was entertained by this guy. He says, "Hey, you'll be driving a Ferrari," and it was really very, very tempting. I mean, all the trappings you could ever imagine. Pretty girl there at the meeting, you know, the whole thing. I mean, he was really working hard to get me to take this offer. And in came at the same time a guy named Enrique Flores, who said, "Can you please help me with my schools in Mexico, and can you please do something there to help us? We're very poor. You don't understand. My students, we can't really afford to bring you." And then I said, "Okay, you know what? I think this is where I need to go because of the teachings of this inner circle." It's like, again, I fought so hard to get that knowledge. I was so vested with the blood, sweat, and tears I put into those matches that with the knowledge I had, it was like, how could I cheapen that by just doing it for money when I could really make some real social impact? And so that's where I found, that's where real success lies in your life. It lies in giving and enriching others. You don't get success from, "Hey, it's me, look at what I did."
Please look at me. I am so pretty. Love me. Want me.
Look at all the money I got. Look at all the toys I got. Because all that's fleeting. It can come, it can go. And believe me, it came and went in my life many times. The only thing that sustained me, and you can ask any of my students, is my commitment to helping my fellow man, my commitment to trying to leave this world a better place than what it was before, and using what advantages I got to help others. And that's what it did. And a year ago or a couple of years ago, I got an award that no one ever gets in Mexico. You know, I got an award from the mayor. I was the first foreign national to get it. I came to the attention of the World Organization for Peace as a result. And now I'm the U.S. delegate. I'm the only, from what I understand, the only American that's a member of this organization. You know, and this organization has done some miraculous things. Like in the last couple of years, we bridged the gap between North and South Korea, where they met and the presidents met, and they're working towards, you know, reuniting families that have.
They need to, man. I have Korean roots. Like they do need to unite. I mean, the country, it's just like the butt of so many jokes, right? I mean,
Right.
North Korea, that is, but
Yeah, but they're struggling too. There's people that are starving, you know, and they have their system of government, and you have to respect it. We may not agree with it, but you have to respect it for what it is if you're going to deal with it, if you're going to affect some kind of change. That's the one thing I got to give Trump credit for. He wasn't afraid to go to the line, and he walked across it. He walked into North Korea.
I asked him, I said, "Would you like me to come across the line?" He said, "I would be honored to do that. I would be honored."
Okay, the guy, I mean, you got to give the guy credit. I don't know whether
he
you
was
like him or
trying to
not.
do something, you know, positive there.
Well, the fact that he did that said volumes. It said like, "Hey, I'm going to come here and talk. Do you want to come to my house? It's uncomfortable. Okay, let's talk." People don't realize that the North Korean war is not over.
Yeah.
People think it's over. It's not.
It's like
just
on pause.
It's on pause. People don't realize that. Most people, they don't get it. You know, they don't study history enough to really know the geopolitical situation.
Yeah,
But
it's definitely interesting.
But you know how wonderful that was for people to be able to communicate now from North Korea and South Korea, where they're able to talk to each other, the families. I mean, that's a huge thing.
That's huge.
Yeah. And that's just one small thing. Another thing we were involved in is bringing electricity to places in Africa where it doesn't exist. You know, you want to change a culture, you want to end poverty. That's how you do it. You have to provide people with that kind of.
And you got involved with that also through the World Organization of Peace?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm involved in other things. And one of the things I got involved in is a project that a lot of people don't know much about, but was gifting musical instruments that were being discarded, okay, in different parts of the world, and going to the most remote regions you could ever imagine on the planet where people don't even have electricity, and giving these instruments to children and they would learn to play music with it.
Wow.
How about a soccer ball for a village? Nobody even thinks about that. One soccer ball, $12. Okay. And now all
Yeah,
of a
you
sudden,
could change and enrich lives with something as simple as that, for sure, man.
and that's what I'm about. That's what it's all been. That's what Dukes Rue is about. It's a martial art movement. It's not a style. Yes, we practice martial arts. Yes, we have, but how do I make that possible where everybody can do it? I figured out we have to find the common ground for everyone. The common ground is the science, the laws of combat. And I went to the trouble of identifying them. Actually went and identified all the different laws of combat, something no one's ever done before. And
And real quick though, Frank, a lot of this was probably stuff you learned fighting all these matches, right?
Exactly. It's taking what I learned and using it to better others. Where do you think why the blood sport has such an impact to this day still on people? They'll watch it over and over again.
Yeah, sure.
Or Lionheart. There's nothing like it.
No, there hasn't been, man. And I always thought it was a magic formula with you, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Sheldon Ledge, which we'll discuss a little more later. But real quick, though, I did want to ask you something about the trophy. That Kumite trophy is worthy of an entire video in itself, which is coming soon. And that trophy, there's an interesting history. More stuff out there than you realize.